Good, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
I'm so glad you could join us. Where are you joining us from?
I'm near Cincinnati in Ohio in the USA.
Nice,
Although I wish I was
nice.
a bit nearer to you where I could get some of your scrumptious red wine. That's my favorite red wine in the world comes from where you live.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. Well, you're certainly welcome anytime to come down under and visit us. But really, really keen for you to bring the listeners up to speed as to how you have arrived at what you're doing today.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone has a story, and mine is a strange one because I'm not particularly interested in the environment, not more than a normal person. What I'm interested in as a scientist is things that are true, right? I'm a problem solver, and my experience, and most people would probably agree, if you start off with good data, you can make sensible choices and usually make good decisions. And so I was aghast when my daughters came home from elementary school some years ago and their teachers had told them just utter nonsense. And I thought, I'm in a nice area with a nice school, which I've moved to on purpose. I'm paying taxes to have my kids brainwashed with absolute tosh. So I thought that made me angry, made my blood boil. So I embarked on this because my daughters were lied to, and I just found that completely unacceptable. And then I thought, well, where are the teachers supposed to get their information? They're reading the same headlines we do. It's not their fault. So no one else seemed to be doing it. So I started reading the science, and then unpaid, and then shared it for free.
I'm looking forward to delving into this. Let's start with some of these myths that have been shared or circulated, commonly, and the headlines. I guess this fear mongering. So what are the
Right.
ones that really, or what was the one that your daughters came home with that you thought, wow, this is rubbish?
Yeah, they were told that plastics don't degrade, that they take centuries to degrade. And World Wildlife Fund and all the green groups are telling us that. And if you go to their websites, and it's of course it says donate now next to this whopping great lie. And if you go to their website, there's not a single scientific study at Greenpeace or World Wildlife Fund or Ellen MacArthur or any of these. I'm not sure about the last one, but none of them. There's never been a study that says that. It's just nonsense. In fact, I've worked personally on developing additives to make plastics last longer so they don't degrade so blooming fast. I mean, so that is there's hundreds of papers and whole books about it. There's decades of science on it, and so they've studied a thing called the illusory truth effect, and that means that if you're told nonsense enough times, you will believe it, even if you've got an IQ of 200. And the only way to break through that illusion is if you're told something which is such utter nonsense that you literally are shaken to your core. And that's what happened to me. That's how I was able to break this illusion and start asking questions when I was told something I just knew was going against 1,000 studies.
Wow. So what have you come across in terms of the degradation of plastics in the environment?
That's one of the most complicated topics to discuss because I'm interested in truth. So you can prove that plastics degrade, and it's pretty obvious when you think about it because plastics are held together by carbon carbon bonds. They're long chain molecules, like our DNA, like the enzymes that make our bodies work, like RNA, like cellulose that trees are made of. So it's the exact same chemistry, and they degrade at about the same speed. So if you took a leaf from a tree and a polyethylene bag and you put them both outside in the sunlight, they degrade at about the same speed because they're made of the same chemicals. And yet we're told that they don't. So then people will say, "Oh, well, plastics are degrading. That's not good. We don't want them to degrade." And the funny thing about plastics is you can tune, as I alluded to a second ago, you can tune that degradation speed. So a polyethylene bag's very thin, degrades quickly. If you have a pipe, for example, a water pipe, that's a way of delivering safe, clean drinking water, and those can be engineered to last 100 years because we want them to last 100 years. So you put a lot more stabilizer and a lot better stabilizers in those. You wouldn't waste money stabilizing a plastic bag with the best additives on the market because there's no point. So you can kind of tune the stability to be as much as you want. And people are big on degradation. They want degradables. And scientists have studied that. And the reason that people want degradables is because they want to be able to drop their litter on the floor and have it disappear like Harry Potter. And they've also studied what happens when you give people degradables. That's exactly what they do. They drop more litter because they think, oh, well, it will vanish. So degradables, which a lot of people are asking for, turn out to not be a good idea. They actually increase impact. They increase littering. So counterproductive. So that's an example of where once you know the facts, you're able to come up with solutions that work and know what things don't work because you know really what's driving the behavior or the thing you're looking at.
And what are some of the other myths out there that you've debunked?
Yeah. Well, pretty much all of them. So, for example, we told that there's a floating island the size of Texas in the middle of the ocean. I don't know if you ever heard that, but
Yeah.
there's never been a picture of it in the history of the world. It's not, it doesn't show up on a satellite. And you can see a cigarette packet on a satellite. That's the resolution of a satellite. And they can't find this floating island the size of Texas. So, in fact, the guy, there was a professor, what was his name? Captain, I can't remember his name now. I think it's Captain Moore. And he's asked by journalists every day, take me out to this floating island. I want to take my photographer and have some photos of it and write a story. And he has to disappoint them and say, I'm sorry, there's nothing to see there. You can literally swim through it and not know you're in it. So there are areas with a bit more plastic. And I'm not saying it should be there, but I am saying we shouldn't lie to our school children and tell them there's a floating island the size of Texas, that it doesn't exist. So, and the other thing about saying that there's a giant island is you think, well, we could just go and clean it up. And the reality is that there's small amounts of plastic so low that if you start to drive a ship up and down, they've calculated this. If you were to get a bunch of ships with nets and try and tidy it up, you end up increasing impact because of all the ships, right? You have to burn a huge amount of diesel to pick up a tiny, tiny amount of plastic that's not even worth collecting. So this is another example where you start with a myth and you come up with solutions that actually make things work when you makes things worse when you do the calculations. So that's
And
one
what
of the
about
most common ones. There's a whole PhD thesis by Kim DeWolf about how that myth of the floating island came to be. It was a mistranslation. There was a German article that called it a carpet of plastic, and then the Russian newspaper Pravda, which ironically means truth, they translated carpet into island, and they drew a picture of an island. They had a cartoon there, and that's where this myth came about. So she traced like that myth and interviewed Captain Moore and asked him all about this stuff and how it came to be and what were his opinions. So this is all well documented, but the myth goes on. The truth never catches up.
Yeah, wow. Wow. It's amazing how we love it's sort of like gossip spreading, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
and
it
it
is.
gets embellished. Yeah, that Chinese whispers, it just constantly
That's it.
gets
Yeah. They
yeah,
did a study
yeah,
on that. They've proven that a lie is 70% more likely to be retweeted than the truth.
yeah, wow.
Which means it has an exponential more higher chance of becoming viral because, you know, a lie is 70% more and 70% on that and 70% on that.
Yeah.
So truth is just not as exciting as the lies are. That's a fundamental difficulty we have. So I'm constrained as a scientist. Everything I say has science, peer-reviewed science. I have I have citations and links on my website to every single thing I'm telling you can be checked and verified and has been checked by professors all around the world, or else I would have been shamed long ago, right? If I was out there spouting nonsense as a scientist, I would have been discredited. But it's been 5 years now, and no one's ever found a mistake.
Yeah, wow. And it's amazing how it, as you said, it doesn't catch on because it's not sensationalized. It's, it's a disappointment to know that,
Yeah,
it's,
it is. It's not news, isn't it? It's like
yeah,
we're not at war. That's not news, is right. But if we are at war, even if it's not true, that's news all of a sudden. So
yeah.
this non-event and non-scary things don't really capture the public attention the same way the whoppers do. In fact, the president of Greenpeace left and so they said they just tell lies for donations. According to him, that is their business model, and that's why he left. He's written books about it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
That's, yeah,
shocking.
yeah. That is shocking. It really is. Just in terms of the interaction with life, like, so we've got these plastics that are degrading and they'll
Right.
continue to degrade and break down. But what about so there's now the concern about how they affect the human species, the wildlife. Have you looked into the plastics and the interaction with life?
Yes, I have. That was the thing when I started. I wanted to just put out that this degradation thing isn't true, right? And then people said, "Well, all right, I get that part. What about the litter?" I'm like, "I don't know. I haven't read the science on litter, so I had to read the science on litter." And they said, "All right, we get the litter part. What about this microplastics thing?" I don't know. I haven't read the science on that. So now, this is my latest book. And before somebody thinks I'm selling a book, this is both of my books are for free and in multiple languages, so I'm not selling books. Um, so anyway, I ended up reading 6,000 studies, peer-reviewed studies, and then had the results checked by professors all around the world. So yeah, I've looked at the effect on life, including 600 studies on microplastics, which is more than I think anyone's read. And the first thing to say about that is that people seem to view microplastic as like a new, unstudied threat, right? Like the fear of the dark, the monster under the bed type of thing. We're afraid of the unknown. But when you start reading the science, and I have people telling me all the time that, we don't have the answers. We don't know the long-term effects. There's going to be some surprise. It's going to turn out to be a danger. I'm like, no, there's like 2,000 studies on this and they go back 50 years. We have long-term studies. We have the answer to every question I've ever been asked has been published already. So people are kind of afraid of the unknown, including people in my own industry. They tell me, oh, it's all unknown. I'm like, well, read the book. It's not unknown. It's all there, right? It's you're just too lazy to actually check it. So we do have the answers. And there's been, let me put it this way, in 600 studies, I've never seen a credible study that showed any harm to animals or us. Not that I'm saying we should have litter, we shouldn't, and we shouldn't use too much materials. We shouldn't create waste and impact that we don't need to. That's probably not good. So I'm not defending plastics. I'm not telling you what to buy. But in terms of being frightened, there's no logical or scientific reason to be scared of plastic particles.
Yeah, wow. Because, like there's been a whole lot of, I guess, articles that I've read, not, news articles, not scientific articles. And there's, saying we've found microplastics in the heart, in the brain, and all this, and then it's that sort of, well, if it's there, is it causing harm? They weren't able to say that it causes any problems. It was found there, but
Yeah.
and then I guess it just leaves it open as to, oh, maybe it's causing all these issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've done a huge amount of research into that. So even I was shocked when I heard there's particles in the body. I thought that doesn't sound good, right? It sounds like something you have a visceral reaction to. So I started looking into particles, not just plastic particles. And people make the mistake of focusing in on one thing and not looking at the big picture. And you end up with a very skewed view if you do that. So if you look at plastic particles, they're about 1 out of 100,000 particles we consume. So for every one plastic particle, we're consuming 100,000 more times other particles, including all kinds of dirt and stuff from outside, and skin cells and spores and quartz, all kinds of things, lead, arsenic, tin, and so forth. The plastic ones are non-toxic. Lifetime consumption is less than 0.1 grams in 70 years. And the safe amount to eat, the NOAEL it's called, that's the safe amount to eat every day for months, is a cup load. So your lifetime ingestion is 1 speck, and the safe amount to eat is a coffee cup full every day for months. So that's how non-toxic it is. Plastic is less toxic than the table salt on your dinner table. It's less toxic than the caffeine in your coffee. And just to give some perspective, right? And some of the other things in dust are proven to be toxic, right? Like quartz causes cancer, lead, arsenic, tin, skin cells, all kinds of nasty things. Wood dust gives you cancer. That's a proven human carcinogen that no one talks about. So, I mean, if you follow this logic, you'd say wood dust causes cancer, therefore we'll ban trees. I mean, this is the logic they're applying to plastic, even though it's non-toxic. When it comes to the stuff in the body, they first found particles moving around in the body in the year 1844. It was a German publication I cited in my book. So it does sound shocking. It does sound scary, but we've known about it for however long that is, 2 centuries. And the body is used to it, right? Since we've started talking, we've probably breathed about 1 million particles each, and we don't give it a second thought, right? A couple of them are plastic, non-toxic. And so we need to have some perspective. And as you may know, I don't know if you have a medical background, but the body is designed to handle particles because we've been doing it for millions of years. Amoebas can handle particles, where it's part of nature. You die if you couldn't handle particles. And so unless you're exposed to really a lot of particles, they're not really a problem. We breathe dust all the time. We don't think about it. Our body's used to it. The only problem it becomes a problem if you're like in a super dusty area, and then your work will make you put on a mask or something if you're dealing with a really dusty situation. In a wood workshop or in a very dusty environment. So there's really no harm from the particles that we're ingesting for the most part, and plastic are the least harmful of them. And as to the blood, I don't know if you want me to keep going, but the blood thing, they have detected plastic in the body. They think, they're not even sure about that. The brain study, I was the first to debunk that 2 years ago. It's a dedicated page on my website about that. And they used a technique called pyrolysis GC mass spec. And that's a technique where you blast the molecule to pieces, a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, and then you take the pieces and have a guess what it was before you destroyed it. That's how that method works. And so the European Food Safety Agency just came out with a report 2 weeks ago, which agrees with what I've been saying for 2 years, which is you cannot use that method for detecting plastic in the body. It doesn't work. What you do is you detect fat and go, oh, it might be plastic. So they're saying that there's 6 grams of plastic in your brain. You'd have to have 6 grams of plastic in your brain to believe that nonsense. But it's gone all around the world. The newspapers have covered it. And the European Food Safety Agency, me, and teams of scientists all around the world have proven that the method they use is just complete baloney. It doesn't work. Other scientists have literally said, you cannot use this method. It does not work. And that's the method that they used. And so forth. So and as you said, there is a report of particles in the blood, but the authors of that study specifically said there's no evidence that they cause any harm, and they found 100 other particles for every 1 plastic particle, which no one ever tells you. So they're very good at reporting the 1 plastic particle and forgetting to mention the other 100.
It's very selective, isn't it? It's sort of like grab the information that supports the sensationalized headline and let's drive that sensational view and not balance it or give the put the facts on the table.
Yeah, I wish I could do that. I'd be rich overnight if I could bring myself to be that unethical that I just made up nonsense. Like, the Martians are coming. You'd be rich. You'd have headlines. You'd have TV crews outside and everything. But the people who are telling the truth, they get almost no exposure. People don't want to hear it because it's too controversial, ironically.
Yes. And it just doesn't have that drama and sensationalism that really drives I guess viewer, pay per click or whatever. In terms of the articles, in terms of what you've come across, has there been anything that's really stood out other than what you've shared? I mean, all that's been quite, but is there anything that you thought that, hey, I really don't know about this. I'm going to investigate, and you sort of found, something real, like something that you've realized is, wow, I didn't know this.
The most shocking thing that I found, and I thought that all the time about microplastics. I mean, I read 600 studies, and every new one that I looked at, I thought this is going to be the one. This is going to be the one that shows that it's toxic, and I never found one. There are studies claiming harm, but they were proven not just by me, but by many teams of scientists to be nonsense. Like they'll use 1 million times too much plastic and then say that there's a problem. You're like, no kidding. Like the fish can't find their food because we put so much plastic in they can't see. So anyway, the most shocking thing I found is that many of the groups we think of as environmental groups are just telling us lies for donations. That's what Patrick Moore, the former president of Greenpeace, said. And he says that the other big ones are doing the same. And you can point to the World Wildlife Fund as an example. They say that we eat a credit card of plastic a week, and science says that would take 10,000 years to do. So, and they have a big donate now button right next to this nonsense. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation said that there'll be more plastic in than fish in the sea by 2025, 2050, something like that. And that was disproven. They had no evidence for it. It was just made up. And that was disproven, and they've never retracted it. They don't say it anymore, but they've never done an official retraction. If I'm ever found to make even a typo, I will correct it immediately. I'll go on LinkedIn. I've got 20,000 followers and say, oh my goodness, I had a typo. I'm so sorry. But these people, if they were genuine and they really cared about the environment more than they do about making money and having a political agenda, they would correct their mistakes and they would follow the facts. But I haven't seen most of these groups doing it. I've seen them, and unfortunately, some very powerful people. Speaking of those, there's a couple of billionaires in Australia called the Foresters who are iron and steel billionaires, right? Yeah. So what did they do? They founded a non-profit called Minderoo. And guess what they do for a living? They make up stories about plastic that they spread around. So if you look at the impact of the iron and steel industry and the amount of iron and steel we make, it's vastly more than plastic. So these guys are very clever, right? I mean, I'm not accusing them of anything, but let's say I could very much understand the temptation if I was an iron and steel billionaire and I'd made my billions on a really dirty, awful industry. I would be very tempted to create a non-profit who pointed the finger at someone else. That seems to be very effective.
Yes, it's sort of like that decoy or dummy to distract the attention over to something else away from what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
plastic does have an impact, but it's less than 1% of the materials we use. And if you look at life cycle studies, which is the only way to know what has more impact or less, plastic has the least impact in 9 cases out of 10. So you can replace it. There are alternatives, but on average, replacing plastic means more cost, 4 times more waste, 3 times more greenhouse gas, and twice as much fossil fuel used. So if you want to pay extra to do that to the planet, by all means, go ahead, but please don't do it with a clear conscience.
And where's your studies or research heading? Like, what's the future direction?
Well, I never know, because I wake up every morning and there'll be some new nonsense about plastics, and then I basically go in and I have to read the study, download the study, read the study, and the tedious part is you have to read the details of the study. How did they do it? Did they use a method that doesn't work, like Nile red dye or like pyrolysis GC mass spec? Did they use 1,000,000 times too much plastic? Did they use a kind of plastic that's not even in the environment? About 80% of studies have been on microplastics have been shown to be invalid because they deal with a type of plastic that no one's exposed to in the real world. It's a special type of polystyrene nanoparticle that you synthesize in the lab, and no one's ever seen one in the real world. So you have to really get into the nitty gritty. And unfortunately, other people are not doing that for the most part. They're just repeating. They do reviews on the study. They'll get a bunch of microplastic studies, they'll review it, and they'll claim all these harms and extravagant figures from studies which are totally invalid because they haven't bothered to read the study.
Wow.
So that's why I got reading glasses now, which I didn't have before I started.
And what do your daughters think now in terms of like the mission they've sent you on? Like, they've come home with this rubbish from the teacher and it's just ignited a flame within you and you're unstoppable. So
I tell you, they're kind of amazed. I had to read 400 studies to write the first book because you had to cover all those topics. And really, most people just select one study that says what they want it to say. I mean, I'm a proper scientist, so I read 6,000 studies and then decide what they say. That's the opposite way, and then have other professors check it. So yeah, now I'm flying all around the world. I'm going to Dubai next week. I've been to Hong Kong. I've never been to Asia before. I'm just traveling all around the world. Even Tasmania seems to be on the menu. So people, because no one else was stupid enough to read 6,000 studies without getting paid for it. So I seem to have become the de facto independent expert. And the irony of it is, flying is terrible for the environment, and I hate doing it. My least favorite thing in the world is flying. So now I'm being asked to fly around and do my least favorite thing. And I don't know why people just can't read the book instead. It's free.
It's interesting, isn't it? We want that human to human tell the story.
Yes.
As opposed to me reading it in print, it seems more real. If a human's telling it to me, it's more real. Like
I calculated. I went to on one of these environmental things, that Greenpeace and all these other ones go to. It was in Ottawa, the Inc 4 event, and I calculated the impact of my flights was 15,000. I think that's right, 15,000 PET bottles, which is more than I'll consume in my whole life. And then I calculated the impact of all the people flying in there, and it was 1 billion PET bottles. And they were flying to talk about this ocean plastic emergency that doesn't exist. They're literally spending $1 billion of impact, and they all drove up in Escalades, these so-called environmental groups. They're obviously loaded from these donations. One of them got blasted for flying a private jet to work every morning. That's how committed these environmental groups are. So anyway, they showed up in their Escalades while everyone else showed up in normal cars, staying in a fancy hotel, didn't want to talk about the science, and just talked about this alleged ocean plastic environment. And let me give you an idea about that ocean plastic, right? Because we hear about, it's all bottles and bags and whatever. A ship had to sail 100,000 miles to find one piece of plastic bag. Just to give you an idea, right? How little there is. The last survey found zero bags, one straw, and a couple of bottles, and the total of it was 0.03% of everything that they trapped in the net. The rest of it was fishing nets, which actually are a problem and actually cause harm. Do the environmental groups propose to do anything about those? Oh no, we'd rather legislate and campaign on the 0.03% that does no impact and make people feel guilty for a problem that they haven't caused.
Wow. I was just thinking you're probably on the most wanted list of Greenpeace and worldwide.
Well, the good news is they've got billions and I've got nothing. So, they've got access to every media outlet that they want. They've got access to the front page of the New York Times. They've got funding from billionaires like Michael Bloomberg and the Foresters. So although I'm like a little mosquito on the back of an elephant, I don't think I'm an irritation to them, but I'm not a serious threat because I've got no funding. I'm doing all this unpaid.
Yeah, wow. So how can the listeners, viewers best support your cause?
Yeah, well, the best thing to do is probably to go to plasticsresearchcouncil.com. That's a non-profit. where I and a bunch of professors, a toxicologist and a life cycle scientist, we work unpaid without a single penny of money to share the science. So everything I've just said, we quote every study, copy and paste with no spin. We cite the study and we give a link so you can check it yourself, and all the questions are answered. There's a video, there's a book there for free in a couple languages, and then there's also a video. So if you were to watch that 20-minute video, you'll know more than anyone in the planet. You'll know anything, any more than any teacher, any politician, any member of your family instantly. If you can find a couple minutes to have a look at what I found.
Absolutely. I'll include those links that you mentioned in the show notes so the listeners and viewers can go directly to those links.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you've come across Greta Thunberg in your travels.
Yeah, people are always asking me, "Oh, why don't you get in front of Elon Musk or somebody, or David Attenborough or something like or Joe Rogan?" Everyone wants me to be on Joe Rogan, but I'm like, I don't have any of these people on speed dial. I'm just a little nobody sitting here at home working on my own, in my living room. I'm in my living room working on my spare time right now before dinner. So yeah, I don't have access to any of these high flyers, unfortunately. And I think they live on an island where the rich people live, and try to avoid speaking to any normal people like us. That's what I would do if I was loaded.
Well, at least you're on the way to getting their attention. I think it would be fantastic to have you on one of these on these shows where Joe Rogan show where you get in front of millions of people. So certainly, hopefully someone comes across this episode and they can introduce you to Joe Rogan. So
yeah. I have been on TV and radio, and Jordan Harbinger, he's like a level down from Joe Rogan. So I've had quite a bit of exposure, but yeah, I'm not on that top tier level because I don't have a billionaire behind me.
You're getting there. Who knows? You might come across that billionaire doing these podcasts, and something they might pick up the book, or
maybe that would be great.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Just keep up the great work, Chris.
Maybe the Foresters will pay me $1 billion to shut up.
Yeah. Well, you never know.
Yeah. At least send me enough Australian wine, I'd probably be convinced.
Yeah. Well, great to have you on, Chris. And if you're ever down under, please reach out. I'd love to catch up. And
I may be this year if this Tasmanian guy comes through. I'll try and meet you in person and have some Eileen Hardy from Penfolds. That was the best. From Hardy's. Eileen Hardy. That was the best wine I ever had. I think it's just gorgeous stuff.
Wow. Well, we'll have to share some when you come down. So
cheers.
Thank you for the great work you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're spreading this message. I'll certainly do my best ensuring this goes far and wide. We'll create some reels and get it across all socials, and hopefully create some traction and get that message out there. I
have a massive following on LinkedIn, so make sure you share whatever you have, and I'll post it there on my LinkedIn feed so that people can find it.
Fantastic. I'll do that. I'll tag you in. So really appreciate your time, Chris. It's been very insightful. I'm looking forward to reading the book and watching the video on your website. So thank you once again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for appreciating evidence. That's rare these days. There's only a few of us left.
You're welcome. The mission of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten the well-being of others. And we can only do that based on, the fact, in order to improve someone's, we'll take them to another level. We need to do it based on what's real and what's actually going to take them to that next level. And there's no point in creating eco-anxiety when in what you're saying is I've debunked it. It's sort of, we don't need to have this eco-anxiety. It doesn't need to exist.
That was a point I just made. I talked to a medical doctor, and her specialty is stress. And I said, people have got more health effects from the stress of stressing over things that are not actually a threat than they do from the thing itself, because it's non-toxic. So that's one thing that worries me. We have the facts, we have solutions that work, and we have people worried about things. There are real things we should worry about in the world, but let's not worry. We can't worry about everything. We don't have the emotional beans to spend to worry about everything that's not a threat. We should focus on the stuff that really matters, like being healthy and having a good diet and spending time with our families and so forth.
100%. And the younger generation today are more exposed than any other generation because they're exposed to 24-hour, 7 days a week news cycle with all this fear mongering and headlines. And so they've been really impacted because they think it's real. They think, and they're not getting the facts. So I'm really keen to make sure I share what you've shared and get it out there to ensure that we can calm some of this anxiety and to improve people's mental health.
Terrific. That's wonderful. Thank you for caring. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Keep up the great
Thank you.
work.
Thank you, Chris. And
Pleasure to meet you.
to the listeners and viewers, please share it this far and wide. If you found this insightful and you've learned something, please share it with others that could also benefit. We'd love to get this message out to as many people as possible. Thank you once again for listening, and thank you, Chris.
Thanks.